Thank you all for coming out tonight for our first ever dinner and debate. Everybody having a good time? Yeah. How about this crew from the Elks Lodge? How about a hand for them? We truly appreciate not only your support, but also getting involved in the process. Part of the process is getting to know your candidates. There was a time when they just glad hands say, oh, come on, vote for me. I need you, I need you. Those days are over. You got to do your homework. You got to know who you're voting for. Too many times we've gotten the shaft. It's a bait and switch. You know? They look all nice and pretty and got a nice smile. And then when you get down to Washington or Annapolis or into the county courthouse or wherever your people gather, they have a tendency to turn on you. Something about power turns candidates around, away. Do your homework. All too often, elections have become a cult of personality. Like I said, he's got a nice smile. Well, he's already in office, so they must be doing something right. No, thank you. Those days are over. The candidates selling you a bill of goods to gain your vote have to end. Do your homework, like I said. Look at their records, and if they have no history, engage them. Ask them questions. Don't let them try to bullshit you with an answer. If they don't have an answer, they should say, you know, I'm going to have to get back to you on that, and make sure that they do. If they don't get back to you, leave them. Find somebody else. The futures of our country, our counties, excuse me, our state and our country hang in the balance of this election cycle. We've seen it too many times. They're coming after our children, indoctrinating them, trying to poison their minds, change their way of thinking of how they see their sexuality. I don't know a 5-year-old that knows what his sexuality is. I'm sorry. But I digress. And there's always just wear the damn mask. Government overreach, and that's all it is overreach, has gotten out of control. Whether it's what you drive, how you drive it, where you drive it, whether you have a diaper on your face or whether you're sticking some kind of chemical into your arm. That's not the government's place. Hopefully these gentlemen up here tonight will set that straight. But I'll tell you, Republicans may not be the solution to all our problems. But we know Democrats are definitely, Democrats and progressives are the problems that we have today. We have an obligation to our children and generations yet to come. We got to right the ship. We got to set sail with his rudder and a true compass. Something that's going to lead us to America first, Maryland first, Frederick first, Allegheny, Howard, Carroll, Talbot. They all have to come first. And hopefully we'll have the right candidates that are going to help lead the state that way. Is anybody taking a head count of the gubernatorial candidates that are here tonight? Two, exactly. So I'm guessing we only attracted the legitimate ones. If you're afraid to venture outside your orb of comfort, you certainly do not deserve our votes. And they quote Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. Now let's meet our moderators. From WFMD, we have Mr. Ryan Hendricks. He's the other half of the morning mayor show on WFMD, 9:30 a.m. Fairly new to the area. About a year now?
No, 3.
3?
Yeah, I spent a year.
My bad.
I spent a year and a half.
My bad.
Spent a year and a half as talk shows.
So damn much I'm listening. Our other moderator is former, commissioner and former delegate, Charles Jenkins. We were expecting to have Andrew Langer, and he got called out of town and was not able to get back in town in time. So thankfully Charles has stepped up and filled in. And now, I see Robin's already taken the stage. From Lawrenceville, just the other side of the Frederick Montgomery County line, Robin Ficker. And from just a stone's throw south of the Pennsylvania line, we have Delegate Dan Cox. All right, our format for the night.
In the middle.
Yes. Our format for the night. Each moderator will ask a question to each individual candidate. The candidate will have 3 minutes to respond. The second candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to that. And the original question will have 1 minute rebuttal. So 3, 2, 1. Now, who gets the first question?
Yeah, we're going to. Guys, welcome to the debate. Thank you for participating. We'll give you guys a couple of 90 seconds to for opening statements.
Hi, Gordon.
Can't hear you back here.
I'll talk louder.
Ready to get the first question? You get the first.
First, can we have you guys introduce yourselves? Robin first, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Republicans of all ages, I'm Robin, and I'm here tonight with the next Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Leroy Yegi. Leroy is from Baltimore County, lifelong. I'm a lifelong resident of Montgomery County, so the two of us have lived all our lives in 2 of the 3 Maryland counties that have the most Republicans. And we're going to represent those people well. We're the only ticket that's going to give you a tax cut for sure. We're going to cut the Maryland sales tax 2 cents which is the equivalent of $780 per year per household. That's every year. Now, it's been said that the legislature gave you a big tax cut this past session. Not true, because the tax cut they gave you is over 4 or 5 years. When you cut the sales tax 2 cents, that saves you $1.75 billion every year and going up. If you look at our signs, we have cut MD sales tax 2 cents on our signs. We're going to have a mandate when elected to the legislature, and the Democratic President of the Senate and Speaker of the House is going to go along with your mandate to cut the sales tax.
Thank you, Robin. Dan?
Dan Cox, I'm honored to be here tonight. The People for Freedom. I am thrilled that my mother and father are here, and many of the family here, kids, my wife sends her love to everyone. I am honored to be running on the Freedom ticket. We are Republicans that believe in our America First values. We're going to restore freedom on day one by restoring the Constitution. Excuse me, Madam Secretary, you're not supposed to interrupt me. Would you say, wear the damn mask? No, I'm sorry. On day one, we're going to make sure we defund international organizations such as the one that my opponent is setting up in Rockville, a $2 billion global pandemic center to prevent and surveil us, we the people. That's going to end on my watch. We're going to make sure that we're going to make sure we end CRT and end this sexualization and indoctrination of our children. And what Madam Secretary, CRT doesn't exist? I'm sorry, we've gone past that now. We know it does. All of you know what's happened recently in our schools, and my hat is off to those who've been fighting that on ground zero right here in Frederick. Thank you to the E&I slate and everyone else who's been out there fighting this issue for our children. And we're going to cut taxes because we need to keep us here. I've already done that with property tax relief during the pandemic, and then also had the privilege of fighting for the gas tax holiday, which unfortunately the powers that be liked the idea but only gave us 30 days. So I'll continue to fight for you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
All right, first question. A recent Washington Post poll ranked education as the most important issue facing Maryland. For years, state Democrats have pushed overhaul on the state education system under the guise of fixing the crisis. Some believe that the real crisis is the cost of living, which is directly tied to increased spending. If you were elected governor, how would you address the out-of-control spending on education? Dan first.
Well, we need to make sure we make school choice a priority and return the money to you so that the money follows the students. And I am honored to be the candidate in the race that is calling for that. I've had a record of fighting for school choice all my life. I've worked in education before I was in constitutional law. When you look at the budget, it's $61 billion this year. That's under a Republican administration, allegedly. We can do better. We can make sure we return that through a line. Look, the Republican governor has not returned the money to you, the people. In fact, a lot of the blame is put on the Democrat legislature. However, the budget presented to the legislature had overwhelming billions of dollars for welfare funding, for catch and release programs for our illegal aliens coming here to Maryland, but very little push for the boost and the opportunities for education. I'm going to change that. We're going to line item that out. We're going to make sure the money comes back to you on every point. And on education, I'm going to stand up to the legislature and say, we are not going to defund police and this entire state of our tax base in order to advance your Orwellian education plan. Instead, we're going to make sure we restore the Constitution, teach it in our schools, make sure that we face the flag and pledge allegiance every day like 7-105 requires in the code. We're going to make sure that we restore that sense of pride in America in our classrooms, and we're going to make sure we pay teachers while we don't let the fluff of money. I mean, literally $2 billion get lost in Baltimore City. Really? We can do better than that, and I will do better than that.
Thank you, Dan. Robin?
I would focus on bringing in jobs and increasing our tax base so that we can pay for things that are necessary. You've heard of Facebook, Meta. It just signed the largest lease in Austin, Texas history. It should have been here in Maryland, but our Department of Commerce was asleep. You've heard of Samsung. They just signed a $17 billion project in Central Texas. It should have been here in Maryland, but our Department of Commerce was asleep. You've heard of Google. Google has 30 regional headquarters in the United States, not one in Maryland. They're going to be spending $9.5 billion on new projects in 2022. We should have landed those projects here in Maryland, but our Department of Commerce was asleep. You've heard of Amazon. Amazon was building its second headquarters with 25,000 jobs, averaging $155,000 each. It should have landed here in Maryland, but our Department of Commerce was asleep and they went to Northern Virginia instead. You've heard of Global Foundries, which is a big semiconductor company. They just agreed to a new $15 billion facility in Malta, New York. It should have been here in Maryland so we could pay our bills, but our Department of Commerce was asleep. You've heard of Microsoft. Microsoft has 2.8 million square feet of space in the Washington area, but only 53,000 square feet of space in Maryland. They should have
Robin,
more in Maryland,
time's up.
but our Department of Commerce was asleep.
Your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you both for participating in tonight's debate. It's great that you both showed up. Mr. Ficker, Marylanders who are not an employee of the county, state, or federal government have had their businesses locked down, their incomes and livelihoods disrupted. Property owners with deadbeat tenants have not been allowed to remove them. While these household budgets have suffered, the state and local governments are somewhat flush with federal COVID funds to the point of giving their employees bonuses. What do you say to Marylanders who have had to stand by and watch the spending with a lack of concern for those not protected by government employment?
I'd say the same thing to them that I said in Annapolis at State Circle in April of 2020 when we had the first Open Maryland rally and I was the only gubernatorial candidate there. I said, we'll flatten the curve for 14 days and then we're going to open up our state. I said the same thing when we had the second Open Maryland rally here in Frederick, and I was the only gubernatorial candidate that was at that rally. And we went all the way to Salisbury, and I said the same thing. And then at the third Open Maryland rally at the State House, once again in July, I was the only candidate at that time for any office who stood up and said, we've got to open the schools up in September. This was in July, and that was in 2020. They did not open up the schools, and Maryland ended up with the lowest percentage of all 50 states of students in actual physical learning, not virtual learning. That is an abomination. That's awful. And then we had 1.5 million people out of work, unemployment, and I met those people. I'm the only candidate who has spent the summer of 2020, the summer of 21, and then again on May 26th, the summer of this year, down on the boardwalk in Ocean City, and I met Fred Profiteer, the head of your group there, in the summer of 2020 on the boardwalk, and I learned what Marylanders were feeling, and I knew we had to help. We had to open up our state, and they were not wearing masks on the boardwalk then, and they weren't getting arrested like they were in Rehoboth on the boardwalk. We need to keep our state open, and I'm not going to put up with any mandates. I like what Governor DeSantis has done in Florida.
Thank you.
So this is the platform issue, and that's why freedom's on the ballot, that's why I'm running. I absolutely will fight the mandates, and interestingly, one of Kelly's people attacked me and said, well, how are you going to run on your issue, which is to make sure we never again lock down our state, lock down our churches, lock down our families, mask our children, mask our jab for jobs. Never again. My opponent, she praised Hogan when he required the jabs for jobs for the state healthcare workers. She said it was reasonable and appropriate. That's her words, not mine. My opponent said wear the damn mask. 5 years old and up. We fought that. And I was at the Reopen rally, the second one. The reason I wasn't keynoting the first one was because this governor threatened to arrest me. I got a call from law enforcement, top law enforcement, telling me that I was going to be made an example of. Well, my good law professor from Harvard said, well, he was a Harvard summa cum laude, but he was Virginia Beach School, said, before you go and play martyr, legally, you should ask a federal judge whether it be so. So that's what I did. I went home and filed the lawsuit with only two other people, two other elected representatives in the state of Maryland standing with me, Neil Parrott and Delegate Warren Miller. And we fought the governor, we fought to reopen businesses, we fought to reopen the schools, we fought to end the mask mandate, make sure our veterans could access PTSD clinics, while my opponent had shut down the clinics, the outpatient clinics, while at the same time keeping 6 abortion clinics open. I raised heck about that, and now she's trying to cover her tracks on that. But the question, I'll end with this, the issue in terms of how things were run for our small businesses. My opponent was the secretary of the DLLR for unemployment insurance, $30 million a year for the unemployment insurance, and they couldn't even answer the dang phone.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm gonna change that.
I'm sorry Dan has the youth and inexperience that he does, because he forgot the order of the protest. The first one was in Annapolis. I was the only one there. The second one, where he didn't speak, was here in Frederick and went to Salisbury. And I wouldn't have stopped speaking just because the governor made some threat to me. I would have spoken out. And that's why I have overturned 5 state and local laws that were passed by the legislature and certified as constitutional by the Attorney General, and overturned them in federal court. In this election alone, I won a federal suit overturning the size and duration of political signs on the Eastern Shore. So I look at things that never were and say, why not? And I'm going to be your governor, and I'm going to double the electrical output of clean nuclear energy at Calvert Cliffs.
Thank you, Robin.
Can I get 30 seconds?
All right, sticking on the theme of the pandemic. During the pandemic, Maryland workers were forced to endure unconstitutional mandates that required them to get vaccinated or face termination. The state government followed the CDC guidelines despite the politicalization of the organization and the inconsistent data that was geared towards addressing a one-size-fits-all solution when it was clear that COVID was only dangerous to people with pre-existing health conditions. Governor Larry Hogan shamed Marylanders into wearing the damn mask. To what extent should state government have in creating public health policy?
None. Absolutely none. That's between you and your doctor, and I'm going to return that to the people. That's the American way. And as part of that, I wanted to just mention, you know, the reason why I filed suit was because I needed a federal judge to tell the governor, like she did, you may not arrest a seated delegate who's speaking against your executive orders. And let me tell you something about the executive order process. Executive orders were originally intended and still remain as part of the constitutional process to order the executive branch. Right. Not you and you and you in terms of your medical affairs. This is an outrage. It's actually a criminal use and a malfeasance under the Constitution, what has happened. And the statute that the legislature passed, I will oppose it. I will ensure that instead we use the DeSantis rule that reverses that to say that if a government agent tries to manipulate and order you around, that the government official is going to be the one facing fines, not the people.
I was against all these mandates from day one. We should have had them for maybe 14 days and that was it. That's why I campaigned the entire summer of 2020 and 2021, because there you didn't have the cops chasing after you for not wearing a mask on the boardwalk. And I met more than 50,000 regular Marylanders, everyday Marylanders, on the boardwalk there during those 2 summers. And they didn't have to wear masks. They were relaxed and happy, as Fred was the day that I met him, and as the way Mr. Wages was when I met him, who's now running for delegate, and I hope he can win. I'm opposed to these mandates. I know the buck stops at the top. My first political memory was watching Harry Truman's inauguration parade on my dad's shoulders. And he said, the buck stops here. The buck will stop with me, and you're not going to have any mandates. You can take that to the bank.
The Biden administration is taking a fundamentally different approach than the previous administration when it comes to immigration. And this is not impacting just border states. As governor, how would you grapple with the Biden administration's approach to immigration?
So immediately I would end the process of catch and release, and unfortunately we are one of 3 states that have a partnership with the Biden administration, flying in people unvetted from the border and releasing them here in Maryland. That's an outrage, particularly when you have MS-13 running around rampant in our state. We even had bodies discovered in Frederick County, of all places, brought up from Montgomery County. We had a young lady down in, and I hate to say this, but this is the facts. A young lady was killed in Prince George's County, hearts cut out, heads cut off. This is the reality that we're facing. You're not being told this every day. It's not in the news like it should be. But I'm going to end that to make sure that I stand up, use state authority to stand up against the overreach of the federal government and say, not on my watch. And we will take every effort and every action necessary to make sure that ends. I know that part of the problem is you have things happening in the night, but when you have an executive who takes charge and then exercises the due authority to make sure these things are on notice, that they're going to end, and then you activate your government to keep a watch out for it, that includes making sure that the federal government knows that we'll do what's necessary if we need to bust them over to Wilmington, wherever Biden's house is. I'm happy to do that.
You ain't seen nothing yet, because in May they're going to do away with the law that prevents you from keeping out unvetted people who want to come into the country who haven't been vaccinated, who may have health problems. And they're predicting that you're going to have 18,000 people coming in, unvetted, per day. That's a 10,000 person increase per day. That's 3.5 million additional people per year. I don't think one governor is going to be able to stop that. Sure, you can speak out, but I've been to a couple of meetings of the Republican Governors Association, and I've met at length with Governor Youngkin of Virginia, and Governor Abbott of Texas, and governors of many other states, including Montana, South Dakota, and South Carolina, other states. And I would get together with the other governors in the Republican Governors Association, and we're going to have a majority. We have 28 now. We're going to have at least 30, I believe, after the election. And to get together with them and maybe try to balance off what President Biden is doing, because he's not going to relent. He, in effect, has repealed all the immigration laws in the United States. There are no immigration laws anymore. He's made them meaningless. And we have to group together with the brightest people in our land, the other Republican governors in the United States, and try to stop him. In addition to electing a president in 2024.
I had to respectfully disagree that the governor can't do anything. Right now, do you know how much the welfare budget has increased for the catch and release program? Nearly $2 billion of your money. That's on this governor's watch. That can end. And number two, we have great law enforcement that can work with ICE. And if ICE, if they're going to try to prevent, look, our sheriff here, Chuck Jenkins, keeps us safe in Frederick. You know that? When I go to Annapolis, they love, many people say, you know, wow, you have a safe county. When you compare that to Prince George's and Montgomery County, we are kept safe. My kids are kept safe here. And if they're going to defund ICE in Maryland, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fund every sheriff, every dime that they take away.
You know, I have a degree in engineering and I'm pretty good at math. I know what the figures are. If you have 18,000 people coming across the border each day unvetted, that's more than 5 million people a year. When you divide that by 435
We're gonna have to cut you off, Robin. We're gonna have to cut you off.
Congressional districts.
Robin, thank you. Thank you. I apologize, folks. That's my fault. All right, so we're going to talk about police. 12 people were shot on Easter Sunday in Baltimore. The state of Maryland is requiring local municipalities to come up with creative ways to address the Maryland Accountability Act bill signed into law after the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you were elected governor, what measures would you implement to A, increase police morale, and B, promote the hiring of new officers? Robin, go first.
Well, I'm pro-police. I've dealt with police all my life. I've completed more than 40,000 cases in Maryland courts, every court in the state of Maryland, including hundreds in Maryland. And I know that the police are very important to protect the people here. I think we have a terrible problem in Baltimore. Many of you here would not want your daughter living in an apartment in Baltimore, let alone even going to lunch there, perhaps. We need to create a very positive job situation in our state, which we haven't been doing. Intel, you've heard of Intel. There's been a semiconductor shortage in the United States that caused us to build 7.7 million cars too few. A shortage because we didn't have the semiconductors. So the Maryland Department of Commerce slept through that. They should have realized that we needed to approach the big semiconductor plants like Intel. Intel is building a $20 billion semiconductor factory in Ohio, and another $20 billion semiconductor plant in Arizona. Maryland made a big deal out of having a $70 million railway plant in Hagerstown. We're talking $20 billion in each of these two states, which is the largest investment, private investment ever in either one of those states. If we had a place in Maryland where you could earn $30 to $60 an hour making semiconductors, you wouldn't be thinking about your guns and fentanyl. You'd
All right,
be
Robin,
thinking
thank you
about
very much. Thank you very
providing
much.
for your family
Time's
instead.
up. Thank you very much. Dan.
So how do we address morale and boosting the police force in Maryland? It's very easy. We're going to make sure we stop the war on police. And I've been doing that in the Judiciary Committee. And we can win. They brought into our Judiciary Committee a bill that was horrendous. They sought to defund the police during the time when the riots were happening. We can never forget the war on police that they did during the election year, right during the lockdowns, where you and I were prevented from going out, but they let people run through our streets and burn our towns and attack our police cars. And the way to handle that as a governor is to make sure you right that wrong, number one. To make sure you say never again are you going to have police officers that don't have protection under quasi-immunity like they're trying to remove right now in Maryland. How in the world would you want to be a police officer if everything you do will be sued? You have to have the proper constitutional procedure, which means that a police officer is protected as an officer of the law. And only for those egregious and malicious and outrageous acts would that veil of protection be pierced. And even in that case, you have to have a very clear and fair process. And instead, they've set up these little kangaroo courts all over the state. So I would reverse that by making sure that the office of governor would have the backs of police officers, and if they don't have proper representation, we would look to the Constitution to see if we can have, that's why we need an attorney general like Mike Peruka. We would make sure that we back the police in court, and if they need, we will have the constitutional support under the law in court to defend them. We're going to make sure we double the budget. Look, like I said, $2 billion in increases over the last couple of years for our welfare programs. So you can get TAMP funds, EBT card handouts. You can get, even through a nonprofit, a free car and a house if you drop and release here. However, our police have barely been funded in the budget, and I'm going to reverse that.
Thank you.
I'm surprised that Dan didn't mention the scourge of our time, fentanyl. Do you realize that fentanyl is the #1 cause of death now for people between the age of 18 and 45? And that includes Maryland. I talked to the state's attorney in Allegheny County. Fentanyl captures there have doubled in the last year. We have to focus on this fentanyl. People are going to drugstore pharmacists whose office is on the corner, and they're buying pills and ingesting that substance without knowing whether or not it's approved by the FDA, which it isn't. We have to focus on the fentanyl, and the police need to be given power and drug laboratories to focus on the fentanyl, which is the #1 cause of death for many Americans.
Thank you, Robin. Your time's up.
Small businesses are the backbone of any functioning economy. Beyond the pressures of inflation and today's supply chain and staffing challenges, the General Assembly continues to pile on one regulatory hurdle after another, imposing higher costs on these businesses. What is your plan to help small businesses across the state of Maryland remain viable?
When I was honored to receive the phone calls from the President of the United States, number 45, and hopefully number 47, when he endorsed my campaign, he endorsed me to be your next governor. One of the things that I told him, and one of the things that he talked about, was the fact that we've got to rescue our small business. We've got to rescue the country, he said. He said the country's at stake. And one of the things that he did was he said, for every regulation that is passed, I want 2 removed. I intend to do that in Maryland. The The other aspect of this, as a small businessman myself for 17 years and a litigating constitutional attorney for 16 years, I believe strongly in making sure that the boot of government is off of our necks. And so the way you do that is you start making sure that they have a lower tax relief, a tax relief plan. Not one time have we had small business tax relief in Maryland in the last 8 years. And not only that, it's been on the watch of my opponent, the Commerce Secretary. During this time, we've had increased regulations. We've had the worst lockdown in U.S. history and in Maryland history, such that according to national groups such as the Wall Street Journal and other organizations that have done the numbers, we are one of the lowest and worst states for small businesses because of the way the lockdowns were handled. So we have to reverse that. We have to incentivize small businesses coming here by saying, you're going to keep more of your money. We're not going to be spending this money. That's your money. We're going to return it to you. Our governor has one of the greatest powers of all the states, discretionary power under the budget, to return the money to the people, and it's not been done. We got a little bit of tax relief this year for seniors, which I did help fight for, and I'm glad for that, but we can do much better, we can do much more, and I intend to make that commitment for our small businesses.
Thank you, Dan.
I thought my friend Dan was going to come out and endorse my proposal to cut the state sales tax and save each household $780 a year this year, every year. If he'd have done that, that will help small businesses because they'll be collecting more of your money. It's not a question of giving your money back. It's a question of not taking your money from you in the first place, because it's not the state's money, it's your money.
Right?
Agreed.
I've been a small businessman. I'm the only Maryland real estate broker in this race, and including being the only person with an honorable discharge from the U.S. Armed Forces and the only farmer in this race. So I know what it means to be a small businessman and meet a payroll. And I'm going to be in your shoes representing you. Every Monday morning at 6 a.m., we're going to have an open house at the governor's mansion where you can come, first serve, and tell me your problems. Tell me if you've been discriminated against, and tell me how we can move our state forward. We're going to open up the mansion to the people that own it, you the public.
Well, I want to move the state to zero income tax and make sure that we reduce our property tax. We can do it. After the lockdowns, I was privileged and honored to be the only Republican to pass property tax reform, providing a tax credit for personal property for property taxes paid in Maryland. And I did that by working across the aisle with a moderate to conservative Democrat. So I intend to do that.
Thank you, guys. I want to go back to education real quick, and I want to cite a local issue that has become a state issue, and that's the State Board of Education and the power that they wield. Recently, the Frederick County School Board's Family Life Advisory Committee hosted a meeting to discuss new curriculum which calls for instruction on things like gender identity and sexuality being taught to kids as young as 5. Board President Brad Young has said that these changes are state mandated and local officials have little to no control over them, and if they push back, their funding will be withheld. If you were elected governor, how would you give local school boards more decision-making power over state mandates such as that? Robin, go first.
Well, my friend Governor Youngkin showed that you have to give parents a say in what the kids are learning, what the kids are being mandated to do, and whether or not it's safe for the kids in school. And I would invite the opinions of the Frederick County people here to give me input as to what people I should pick to put on the State Board of Education. We have to have the common person in Maryland picking these appointees, these powerful appointees who aren't responsible to the voters, instead of just taking them from the in crowd down in Annapolis. So put on your thinking caps. Who do you want me to put on the State Board of Education?
Jordana!
We also need to have good people elected to the local Frederick County Board of Education. You know who you are. They're here tonight, and make sure you elect them. You have a slate running in Frederick County of people that'll give local control to the parents. Your vote matters. Elections matter. So keep that in mind on July 19th.
Why do we need a state board?
So you know that the current governor and his cabinet, including my opponent who's not here tonight, they are the ones who appointed the board that is doing this to our children. It was on their watch, and I'm going to end that. We're going to make sure with the great Lieutenant Governor Jordana Schiffinelli, who has experience. She and her husband have experience in changing the way things work with the boards of ed, and we're going to do that for all of Maryland. And I think what you need to have hope for is that this is the people's board. That's why we have local elected boards. And one of the things that the governor can do, and I do pledge that I will do, is to end this indoctrination. The indoctrination, not education, not indoctrination, is essential by making the budget, the distribution of funds to say, look, you're not going to teach this to our children. And we're not going to appoint you to these positions if you're going to force this on our localities. The localities have to make those decisions and judgments. And if a locality goes off the rails, we're going to have a discussion. We're not going to do this to our children. And you know what? What's very sad is that when I introduced the Maryland Parental Bill of Rights in the legislature this year, we had what's great is we had 50,000 parents with 6 organizations testify in support of it. You know who didn't show up in support? My opponent, Kelly Schulz. Not only that, she then cut a TV ad saying that she was introducing her own parental bill of rights. She's not even in the legislature, but she stole my bill point for point. Now that's fine, more the merrier. However, when I specifically said that we must end the gender indoctrination and expression for pre-K through 3rd, I put it, and really it should be for all through K through 12. I put that. So I put it on the House floor because I wanted every legislator in the House of Delegates to vote on that issue. And you know what happened?
Thank you, Dan.
The governor went on television trashing that concept, and my opponent did nothing about it.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
The Second Amendment is under siege in Maryland. As you know, Beretta left the state, a long-established gun manufacturer, several years ago due to the hostility of the Maryland General Assembly. What would you do as governor to reassert the power of the right to keep and bear arms?
Well, you heard me say before that I was the only veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces who has an honorable discharge from the Armed Forces. And I was an expert marksman and was a lifetime member of the NRA. So I'm going to protect your Second Amendment. Frederick hunters, Frederick citizens, the Second Amendment is safe with Robin as governor, and we're not going to have it picked apart. It's a constitutional right, just like the First Amendment, just like freedom of religion. It's in the Constitution. And so you're safe with me as governor.
It's not about the hunting, although I like to hunt. It's about making sure that your family, your house, and your country are safe from invaders. I have fought the red flag law from the time they introduced it. I was up in the galley texting individuals, asking them to please not vote for the red flag law. I think Delegate Fulton is here tonight. Where is he?
He left.
He left already, but he changed his vote while I was there in the galley, and I saw him vote against the red flag law. I oppose this draconian ban on ghost guns unless you register it with the government. We fought hard against that. We stripped the bill out of so many bad things, but it still got through with this really crazy requirement that you have to invent your own serial number and go in and put it on. And what they're doing, I think, is they're cleansing illegal guns in Baltimore City because they've scratched off the serial numbers, and now they can just go and pay $75 and put their new serial number on. It's a legal gun. You see what they did? We fought that. So as governor, I'm going to instruct the Maryland State Police to shall issue concealed carry permits to follow the law. We are going to make sure that all laws regarding the Second Amendment that are unlawful constitutionally will not be enforced by the state government. And I'm going to lean heavily on great constitutionalists like the future Attorney General Mike Peruka to make sure that we overturn these laws in court. And it's looking very good. I have partnered, and I will appoint to the head of the Maryland State Police and to our different divisions people like MSI litigator who I partner with to make sure that we defend our freedoms. The Maryland Shell issue shows up in my committee all the time, so we're going to make sure that happens. Thank
you. We are going to turn it over to audience questions. Which one do you want to take first? Okay. Yep, this can be for all of you on cam. What would you say to those independents and Democrats to make them want to switch party affiliation to Republican so they can vote for you? Start from left to right.
All right, so what I would say is that the issues we're debating tonight are not really a partisan issue. These are social issues, especially the issues revolving around children, what they're learning, school choice. This should never be a political issue. It's a social issue. So for those that are independents, I cannot find an independent voter that wishes that their child is growing up stupid and uneducated. So we all have the same goal. We want our children to grow up to be smart, to know how to think, to be critical thinkers, to be fully bilingual, trilingual, to understand this world we are living. And for that, we need way, way better education than we have today. So this is a nonpartisan issue, and I will talk about these issues. Safety on the streets, that's another nonpartisan issue. Who wants to live in a street and get shot by a stray bullet? So show me a person that wants to live in that kind of city. So these are the issues that should never be partisan issues, but they became partisan issues. And as someone who's working and supporting our Restore Freedoms campaign, I'm going to focus to address these issues that will work for the entire state of Maryland. Every single Marylander to live in a safe home, to have a safe state, smart kids, smart schools, and what more do you want? What more does anybody want?
Jordana Schiffinelli would make a great lieutenant governor. We're going down the line?
Yes.
Okay, so the way you reach out to the independents, the unaffiliateds, and the, what I say, the freedom-loving Democrats, there are a few of them that still exist. And actually, that's for real, the way you do it. What's that? Joe Manchin is a good example, yeah, although I don't agree with him always, but he has done some things right. But let me tell you this. Democrats that are about 26% of the Democrats in Maryland, about 65% of the unaffiliateds in Maryland support freedom, and they want their privacy and their health care back. They know they do not want jab for jobs. They're done with forced masking. They're absolutely appalled at what's going on in the schools, as Jordana was saying. And every time I talk to them, they agree with me. I was just at a gubernatorial debate in Prince George's County. I was the only Republican that attended. And I got a clap, a very good, strong clap, from an entire Democrat audience. When I talked about the mandates, ending the mandates, the medical mandates, and making sure that we keep our seniors here by reducing the property taxes. So when you talk about these real issues, people light up. They want politicians that are not politicians. They want people that are going to represent the people's interests, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, I'd say to these independent voters, sure, vote for me because you already have voted for me. I have placed 25 ballot questions on the ballot in Montgomery County, which is the most liberal county in the state, where the second largest party is unaffiliated, and I've gotten through limits on property tax increases countywide, which stopped property tax increases for a decade. I got through term limits despite the opposition of every elected official in Montgomery County and 5 editorials from the Washington Post. We got 70%. And I also got through ballot questions barring sewage sludge trenching, number 1, and number 2, garbage dumps in residential zones. So independents, come on over to Robin and Leroy and vote for us because you already have. My ballot questions have gotten 2,537,403 votes. If you're running for governor, you have to do something first. You just can't say, I want to run for governor. You have to do something. And I put 25 questions on, which have gotten 2.5 million votes, including majorities of independents, and in a couple of cases, even the Democrats. So come on over to Robin and Leroy, independents, and you're going to be very happy that you did.
Thank you, Rob.
Oh, I look at it this way. The big red wave is coming. It's going to hit Maryland. We all need to participate and find friends of ours that are Democrats, independents, and bring them our way. They're out there. There's tons of them out there. Because we know we're doing the right things. And it's important to get that side, not just independents, there's a lot of Democrats too. I'll tell you a quick story. My wife's an immigrant. She's from Peru, came here the legal way. We got married in 1990. 1992, one day, I almost had a heart attack. I came home from work, walked in my house. My wife's got Clinton stuff everywhere. She had no idea she went to a rally downtown Baltimore, and they gave everybody, signed everybody up Democrat that day. I walked in the house, and I'm like, this is going to trash, this is going to trash. They're lying to these people. They're lying to them every day. When Trump was president, those people coming from Guatemala and Nicaragua and all those countries, the Democrats are loading them up with buses saying, go to the border, they're going to let you in free. That's what happened. And it made Trump look bad. It made the Republicans look bad. And it wasn't us. So we need to see that motion and actually tell them exactly what's going on. There's a lot of people out there I know we could change. And I'm doing my hand, me and my wife, we've been in the Latino community, and we're making changes. I have two kids, both bilingual. My daughter's now wants to learn Chinese. She wants to learn a third language, which she's 10 years old, and I think, or 11 years old, I think it's awesome. But we need to stay active. Everybody in this room. We need to know who those other people are, who's on the fence, and bring them our way. And we can make that change this come election. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could have both Dan and Robin answer this question. It's two-part, they're not related, but we can move this along. Who is the current governor in the United States that you admire and why? And somebody asked from the audience, Robin, how will you cut the sales tax with a Senate and a House that is, at this point, quorum-proof? Not a Republican could show up and they can still conduct business.
Yeah.
You want to go first? Dan? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. So there are two governors, at least, that I respect at the top of my list, and that would be Governor Ron DeSantis and Governor Kristi Noem. They're freedom governors. The policies that they have followed, you might recall, they did not lock down their states, and when you compare Maryland's responses during the lockdowns to Florida, Florida had 20 million people, very diverse, and yet they have a lower death rate than Maryland, which crushed us and crushed our economy, crushed our businesses. The current governor and my opponent, the former Commerce Secretary, claims that somehow we have a great recovery. It's not true. The difference is Maryland has a high number of federal and state workers, almost 50% of the workforce. That's what they're relying on. But they never got shut down. And God bless them for their service. But what about the other 50% of the economy that was crushed and we're still reeling from it? Now we got to go fill our gas tanks up, at an outrageous continued rate. So I absolutely admire the way DeSantis and Noem have run the state. That's the procedure, that's the path I would take. I also believe, when you look at the supermajority in the legislature, we are going to make a difference. This is part of why I'm running. We need 10 seats in the House of Delegates and 4 in the Senate to start canceling more of their bills. Now, we kill a lot of bills. When I'm in the Judiciary Committee, we have the highest number of bills that come through the legislature in the House, about 1,500 a year. And we kill most of them, but there's still too many to get through. So can you imagine 1 or 2 more Republicans on the committee? We would kill more bills. And we would also be able to advocate. And with 4 to 5 senators, additional Republican senators, we would be able to stop these continuous veto overrides. So I think that's why we're running. That's what I'm going to continue to focus on, and making sure that we have the individuals that create more of a balance in our legislature. But even if we don't, I will use the executive office for freedom at every point. I am not a compromiser on our principles. And I'm the only one running that has pledged that.
Well, I believe in freedom too. That's why I was the second youngest in my class at the United States Military Academy, and why my wife, who I married later, was the daughter of Lieutenant General Joseph Heiser, who was in charge of logistics for the Vietnam War for the U.S. Army. I know a lot about freedom. The governors I admire are DeSantis because he thinks for himself and he's not afraid to penetrate the unknown, and Governor Youngkin, who I've spent a good deal of time with at the Republican Governors Association. He's the one that put parents back into the schools, and I admire him greatly for that. As for the sales tax, it's on our signs. It's on our mailings. You've all gotten our mailings. You've gotten the mailings with Governor Youngkin photo too. And that's the theme of our campaign. That's going to be our mandate. And these Democrats are going to have a hard time, believe me, saying, well, you were elected governor, but we're not going to honor your mandate. The mandate comes from the people, and we're going to get that sales tax cut through. Right now, the Republicans are sort of in a reactive mode. They say, well, we're not in favor of these tax increases. We're opposed to automatic increases in the gas tax every year. We wanted a 90-day, they settled for 30. The sales tax is the theme of our campaign. It will be our mandate, and the president of the state Senate and the Speaker of the House are not going to be able to say no to the people's mandate. And believe me, I will be there fighting for that mandate till the heavens fall.
Thank you, Robin. I'm going to take this next question I forgot to ask off my list, but it's also mixed in with audience questions. Looking ahead to the 2024 presidential election, do you think Donald Trump should seek re-election? Yes or no, why or why not? We'll go left to right, with each person getting 1 minute since we're running low on time, and I want to get to as many questions as these. Go ahead.
Yes.
Absolutely yes. And when he called me, I said, I'm running hard against the Hogan pick. And he said, good, we got to win, man. And I said, I don't know if I can keep who will be former Governor Hogan, off of the stage there. He said, I hope he comes up there and he might fall off.
I definitely think that he should run for president again, and I condemn what they did in Anne Arundel County, where even some of the Republicans voted for a resolution which said that he should not run for office again. But I want to point something out to you. We have a problem here in the Maryland Republican Party, because President Trump would never vote for Larry Hogan. And Larry Hogan has already shown he would never vote for Donald Trump. I'm the only person running for governor who can get along with both sides, with the Trump side and the Hogan side. You just heard what Dan says. He can get along with one side rather well. And our absentee landlord here can get along with her side. She will not even say that she voted against Trump in 2014 and 2018. She won't see it, but she didn't vote for him.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Unequivocally, yes. Trump was the best president we've had, with Reagan. Everything he did, he said he was going to do, he did. And it came true. Business increased, everything. ISIS was gone, Al-Qaeda was gone. It was amazing what he said he was going to do for him, and it actually happened. So why not have him back in there?
Robin, gubernatorial candidates, what will you do as governor to protect the innocent life in the womb?
I was pro-life when I was elected. The time I was elected to the House of Delegates from Montgomery County, I was the only Republican on the ballot for any office who won that election, and I ran as pro-life. My wife was pro-life. She was in the medical mission sister. She was a nun when I met her, and she hadn't taken her final vows. She was very pro-life. She also became president of the church council of the largest Catholic church in Montgomery County, Our Lady of Mercy. So I'm pro-life, always have been, always will be. Been to the March of Life a couple of times, not every time because it's pretty cold out there, but I watch them on TV and approve what they're doing. So I vote right, and you're going to have an in with the governor if you're pro-life, believe me.
I'm very honored to be pro-life, obviously. Some people might get that just looking at my wife and our 10 children. But really, they're also secret votes right now. But I'll tell you, so I've been honored as a delegate to be endorsed by the Maryland Right to Life, and work closely with the National Right to Life, Maryland Right to Life, and all pro-life organizations. I carry their bills. I put about 5 to 6 bills in every year for life, including the Down Syndrome Protection Act, and I have not voted. Look, I didn't go to Annapolis to vote for money for abortions. Do you know we're the only state in the 5-state region that puts money in from the governor's office into the budget to pay for abortions on demand for anyone coming in through Medicaid? How can you do that? I have fought that. I put amendments on the House floor to stop it. I've asked the governor to take it out. He did not. My opponent, Ms. Schulz, refuses to speak about it. She has never sponsored as a primary sponsor a single pro-life bill. I sponsor about 6 a year, and I believe it. It's not just for something I'm doing. I fight for it on the House floor. And I absolutely believe that the path forward for Maryland, for healing, for both all the blood on our hands from the unborn that have died, but also for all the women who are needing healing. The path is the pro-life path, and from conception to natural death, I'm going to carry that forward into the governor's mansion.
All right, guys, next one on election integrity. What is your take on election integrity? And we'll start with Robin.
Well, you folks got recently, I'm sure, as I did, the absentee ballot application. And I read it very carefully because there was a question on there I vehemently disagreed with. The question was, do you want to get an absentee ballot for all future elections? Now, everyone who got that letter one day is going to move, whether it be to another state or to heaven, or they're just going to pass on. So we're going to have, in a few years, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of absentee ballots floating around where people have died or where they've moved away. That question really gave away the election integrity in Maryland, and I'm very much opposed. I got an absentee ballot at my house for my son who hasn't lived with me since 2008. I could easily have filled it out and sent it in, but I couldn't very easily have gone down to the polls and impersonated someone who was 35 years younger. We need voter ID.
Absolutely, we need voter ID, and you know what I've been privileged to fight for is just that. I had the opportunity serving President Trump on Lawyers for Trump team in Philadelphia, and I saw what they were doing with the mail-in ballots. Some of these ballots were brought in the middle of the night after Trump was up by 1 million votes, and many of these ballots, as we saw and witnessed, several attorneys with myself, was that they were all voting for one person, Basement Biden, and they looked perfect. That's going to end on my watch. That's why when I ran, and I've talked to the president about this, one of the things I'm going to do is, under the Constitution, execute the laws protecting our election integrity, and I'm going to order an audit of these machines and of our mail-in system. Right now, the mail-in system requires affidavits. Hundreds of thousands of those affidavits aren't filled out or are false. We've got to expose that. We have a limited amount of time left. If they haven't violated the law and destroyed these 2020 ballots already, the federal law requires them to be held just for these kinds of purposes. I'm going to make sure we have transparency and use the Constitution to expose the fraud. And I'm going to then go forward fighting in the legislature, as I have been doing, putting in amendments and bills to make sure that we allow for auditing, that we try to end this mail-in ballot. And my opponent, Kelly Schulz, put in the only election bill she ever put in was to allow mass mail-in of all municipal elections in Maryland. That was on her watch. That was her bill. I absolutely oppose that. I think it needs to be limited to military and people that have certifiable needs where they can't make it to the voting booth, that they have the proof of that. And let me tell you, this is the thing of the future. If we don't get a handle on our voter integrity, we don't have a country, so I'm going to fight for that.
This member wants you to talk about why it's important to know what the governor does, such as appointing judges and other key appointments and being ready on day one to fill vital positions with folks who'll have your back.
Great question, and you know, the saddest thing about the redistricting cases that you might have heard, we got a good a little bit better congressional map, but we were rejected in the litigation regarding all of the state House and Senate districts. This is a travesty. And you know what the greater travesty is? That 5 of the current 7 justices were appointed by this governor and this cabinet. And this is what we get? This was what I fought for Hogan to be elected for, to fix the gerrymandering. And he had 5 seats come up to do that. And he put liberals on the top court of Maryland. Not on my watch. We're going to make sure we have appointees that value the Constitution first, that are strict constructionists under the Constitution, that will always follow it. And we're not just going to look at the judges. I mean, we have to make sure that all the judges that get appointed are following that standard. But also we're going to look at the cabinet officials, like on the election integrity issue and these other issues. We're going to put conservatives that understand the fraud we went through, that understand that we've got to get a handle on our state and the dollars that are flowing illegally. I mean, it's really a scam. If you knew half, I mean, I'm sure some of you know half of what goes on, but when I'm in Annapolis, let me tell you, the money is flowing. It's ridiculous. We need hard, strong conservatives to step up in the cabinet and to say enough is enough. This is the people's money. This is the people's constitution, and we're going to keep it.
Well, I'm going to appoint good people when I'm governor, and as a matter of fact, I invite Dan to apply sometime after the primary, and we'll get him going and keep him nice and busy down in Annapolis fighting for you, as he has been, as someone who was won in a district with 35,000 votes. That's a good base to have.
135,000.
35,000 to win a seat in the House of Delegates. Now, I invite you folks to send me a resume if you want a job in the state government. Mention the fact that you were at the debate with the Frederick County Conservative Republican Club. That won't guarantee you a job, but I'll tell you right now, folks, it sure won't hurt. So we're going to appoint good people who love our state, who keep our bay clean, who want to improve I-270, which has been a parking lot since I was in high school. We need to get Maryland moving. We're going to do that. We're going to improve 81. We're going to improve the Beltway. And we're going to get Maryland moving once again. Nice to be with you.
I'm going to paraphrase this next question because I can't find it in the stack. But the question was related to getting the Democratic vote in PG in Baltimore, which obviously massive voting bases. How do each of you gentlemen propose to do that? Dan, go ahead.
So no Republican governor has ever won Baltimore City, Prince George's County, or Montgomery County. However, I've had the privilege and honor of doing several things that I believe will end up with the highest number of votes in each of those counties. I would love to win all three, but let me tell you, in Baltimore City, the movement is on to restore their sense of safety. And when I met with Democrats in Baltimore City, you know what this one Democrat restaurant owner, she said, I've voted Democrat all my life. And I have one question for you. I said, what's that, ma'am? She said, if you get elected, are you going to be a rhino? And I said, no, ma'am, I'm a constitutionalist and I'm going to protect your business. I'm going to make sure that these murders end. She said, good, then you have my vote. And her reasoning was this. She said the Democrat Party has left the people. And they're leaving them in Baltimore, being strung out and murdered every day. Almost a murder a day in Baltimore City. Okay, and then in Prince George's County, large numbers of, look, I was privileged to speak at the Black Caucus. Some of you were there. I'm told that I won the straw poll with 300 Democrats present. That's what I was told. Yeah, I don't have that in proof, but that's what I was told. Now, they believe in freedom. They don't want any experimental jabs like what happened in Crownsville. You can go and see the graveyard there. I'm never going to do that. I'm the only candidate saying that I'm not going to do that. And then lastly, with Montgomery County, I've been privileged to be on the ballot there 4 times. I've won 127,000 of those of Montgomery County votes and also some of the other district votes when they gerrymandered us. I believe I can win the highest numbers of freedom voters ever in the history of Maryland. And we saw that this is happening across the country. This is the moment, this is the time. We need genuine conservatives to step up and reach out. Thank you, Dan.
Well, you're talking about 3 counties here. First of all, I want to say that, you haven't seen the polls in the news, have you? That's because the polls show that Robin is the candidate coming out of the Republican primary that would do the best against the Democratic winner. That's what the polls show. I'm a lifelong resident of Montgomery County. My ballot questions have gotten 2,535,000 votes. They have gotten 70%. Every one of my questions has gotten at least 40%. Dan, when he ran in Montgomery County, got it like 25% of the vote there. My ballot questions have gotten 40 to 75% of the vote there. Prince George's County, I had a law office there for 40 years and have represented over 20,000 Montgomery County citizens in court. Baltimore, did you hear Kim Klasick's radio show today? You know Kim, right?
She endorsed it.
She has a radio show there on WBAL. Today she said, and she said that, and Leroy heard it, that Robin is doing the best job of the Republican candidates in fundraising. So you need some fundraising to win. And in Baltimore, I'm going to bring in the Baltimore Bombers, which is an NBA team to compete with the Wizards. We're going to bring in jobs so that these $30 billion semiconductor plants don't go to Arizona, Ohio, and Texas. We're going to bring them in and give the people in Ohio jobs where they're earning good money and don't have to worry about their rents. So I'm going to do the best of the candidates, as the polls show, not only throughout the state against the Democrats, but in those 3 Democratic jurisdictions.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. And we have gone through the questions submitted by the audience without getting into replication. So, Fred, is there anything else you want to? Did you want to wrap this up?
Ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming out tonight, for having the guts to show up. Take the stage, face the people. 2 minutes to close. Start with Jordan.
I haven't even opened anything. I haven't had an opening statement. I'm going to start with a closing statement. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for switching row here and allowing me to sit and be with these distinguished gentlemen. For those who don't know me, I am Serbian-Ukrainian American, so I know quite a few gruesome stories that happened over the course of my ancestry and my own life. I came to America in '99 during NATO bombing, and I know what these people in Ukraine are going through. I was one of them. But I want to focus on Maryland children and Maryland residents, and Maryland children and Maryland residents come first. And so we are here to make lives for everyone better. It's never been time like this. I believe Mr. Cox is a man of history. Mr. Ficker is a man of history. We are here with all of you, and it's 1776 all over, because what we are trying to do today, we are trying to save our own country. Yeah.
You're right, 2 minutes, please.
Very well said. Very well said. I don't know if anybody heard today or not, but in Baltimore City, they just said today they're going to come up with civilianship police. Did anybody hear about that?
Cops already are.
Exactly, but they want to hire civilians to investigate crimes.
It's already done that
It's
way.
BS. It's BS. Whoever takes over the state of Maryland, whether it be our running partner, Mr. Ficker, or Mr. Cox, this has to change. This has to change. You know, Baltimore City is the heart of the state of Maryland. It's in the middle. Everything falls out of Baltimore City. We need it to be healthy again. A healthy Baltimore City is a healthy state of Maryland. I worked in Baltimore City during the riots. I was at Kingdom Yards the night the riot started. I was never so scared to see hundreds of people charging towards the window. I was general manager at Dempsey's Restaurant, Kingdom Yards. and they were trying to break down our windows. We had 20-foot windows. They did break down our door windows and got into the doorway, and we pushed them out. And then after the game, they were locked in the stadium. And then for 2 weeks after that, every day for lunch, I had the National Guard in my restaurant with their M16 sitting next to me eating lunch. I felt like I was back in Peru from where my wife's from. I was in the third world country. I never want to see that again. We never want to see that again. Somebody's got to take control of the city and make it right again. Because these idiots we got now aren't doing it. So that's one of the main reasons I'm doing this. Baltimore City, during the pandemic time, make this real quick, a lot of restaurants are closing up. I was in a restaurant business 35 years. A friend of mine, John Menadakis, who owns Jimmy's Seafood Restaurant in Baltimore, we formed a fund called the Jimmy Fund. And in one night, we raised $25,000. In a matter of a month, we raised $500,000. We donated $20,000 to 30 different restaurants in Baltimore that are going to close down. They're going to close down. The government didn't help. Nobody stepped in. They didn't care about these people. We cared. So whatever you guys decide to do on Election Day, may God be with you. Praise, and God bless everybody. Thank you for letting me share.
You have to close first.
Okay, well, let's talk about jobs for a minute. We're going to cut the state sales tax 2 cents, saving you $780 per year per household, and that will be a lure to get these large companies, all of which are shunning your state, my state, our state, Maryland. They're all shunning Maryland, and the Maryland Department of Commerce has been asleep. You've heard of Apple. Apple just agreed to build $1 billion campus with 3,000 jobs, paying $180,000 each in North Carolina. It should have been in Maryland. You've heard of Toyota, you've heard of EV batteries, right? The batteries needed for electric vehicles. Well, that's an up-and-coming big industry. But Toyota is building $1 billion car battery plant, not in Maryland because the Maryland Department of Commerce was asleep, but in North Carolina. These are the companies that have shunned Maryland in the last 2 years. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Global Foundries, Google, Intel, Microsoft, Nucor Steel, which is building the biggest private plant ever in West Virginia that should have been in Garrett County and Allegheny County. Samsung, Taiwan Semiconductor, Texas Instruments, and Toyota. They should all have located in Maryland, but our Department of Commerce was asleep, and we're going to have a job strike force to go out to these companies and convince them to bring their high-paying jobs back to Maryland, back to Frederick, back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Danny, close us out.
I'm for jobs too, but what good are jobs if they're being locked down and destroyed? I have pledged to end that and make sure it never happens again. We have just come through 20 years of war. That's why I take my children to walk the hallowed grounds at Arlington. And almost every time we've been, you see a new grave, or we get to hear the haunting 21-gun salutes. Several times the carriages have gone by with the casket and the family. This is the question. Where is our hope, Maryland? Our hope is in the fact that we are created in the image of God, the Imago Dei, and that means we have constitutional protections. And never again am I going to let your rights be trampled upon. We're going to make sure that our protections are there for medical freedom. We're going to make sure that our children are not destroyed in our schools with perverted mindsets. We're going to make sure that our vaccines are your decision. We're going to make sure that our businesses are open so you can provide and you can go to church. Can you imagine what we've come through the last 2 years? And hardly anyone on the governor's stage has said anything about it. I'm the only one saying, that's why I'm running.
Yeah.
This is the fight of the time, and this is what you've heard my lieutenant governor say. And when President Trump called me, and I thanked him for endorsing me, you know what he said? He said, Dan, we've got to save the country. I'm asking for your vote. Go to coxforfreedom.com. Please go and help us out. Thank you so much.
Big note. Joe Werner did not show up. Kelly Schulz did not show up. This is supposed to be her town. We are supposed to be her people. She has proven herself wrong. We are not her people, obviously. If we were her people, she would have been here. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for standing up and getting involved. Get behind your candidates.